All right, there we go. David wants to record.
Thank you, Ms. Hogren, for the introduction, and thank you for inviting EPA to speak today at this club meeting. And as you mentioned, my name is Andre. I am with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, where I've been since 2005 after completing the U.S. Peace Corps in Ecuador. And I do have one slide that's going to tell you a little bit about EPA, so I'll get there in just a second. First of all, I want to say hello to Cal State University Dominguez Hills students. It's great to be here with you. And I'm actually here in Los Angeles. And it looks like we've got a pretty good crowd going today that's on a mission. And in this session, your mission is to learn about emerging issues in the sustainable management of food. You'll gain insights into three things. First, facts about food waste and the National Food Waste Reduction Goal. Second, some challenges and solutions to food waste. And third, tools and resources for reducing wasted food. So first, a brief overview of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, established in 1970 by the U.S. Congress and President Nixon, with Administrator William Ruckelshaus shown here. EPA's mission is to protect human health and the environment. Over 50 years, EPA and states have cut air pollutants by 77% and prevented the use of 9 million tons of virgin materials, all while the US economy has grown 285%. Now, EPA always has an appointed administrator. It's a political appointee, as I mentioned. William Ruckelshaus, shown here, was the first presidentially appointed EPA administrator. And our current EPA administrator under the current presidential administration is Michael Reagan, who previously worked at the Secretary of the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. Each EPA region, of which there are 10, and in which we are in Region 9, showing these states here, our Region 9 administrator is Martha Guzman, who was previously commissioner at the California Public Utilities Commission. And though I have yet to serve as administrator, as I mentioned, I have served at EPA for 19 years. So let's just start first with a quick quiz to see how much you think you know about excess food and food waste. So if you have a pen and paper, you feel free to write these, what you think is the correct answer, or just in your mind, come up with an answer, and then we'll come back to this at the end. So if the first question is, how much of our food goes uneaten each year? That is to say, how much food do farms harvest and sell to consumers who then actually don't end up actually eating it? You know, they throw it away or send it to compost. Is that half our food, 1/3 of our food, or 1/10 of our food? Second question, the national value of our uneaten food is $1 million, $161 billion, or $1 billion. Third question, what's the national goal to reduce food loss and waste, percentage reduction in year? Is it a 25% reduction by 2025, a 50% cut by 2030, or 90% by 2100? Number four, what's the name of the federal law protecting surplus food donors from liability? Is it the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Food Donation Act? There are no laws protecting surplus food donors from liability, or the Federal Tax and Benefits Remediation Surplus Food Donation Amelioration and Nutrition Act, Code 56344281148 of 1972, and amended in 1994. And the final question is, to prevent excess food at home, you can make a grocery list before shopping, track and measure your excess food, shove your surplus food to the back of the fridge, and tell yourself you'll eat it sometime soon. Properly store your fresh produce, or shop your kitchen first. So, as I said, we will come back to those questions. Here's a disclaimer saying that the info presented here does not constitute EPA policy. So let's get to the vegan meat and potatoes of the presentation, shall we? Say that you've completed your breakfast of tofu scramble and hash browns, but you're too full to finish it. So you ask yourself this important question: how much of our food ends up in a landfill or incinerator? Food is the single largest type of material going for disposal in the US. About 1/3 of our food goes uneaten each year. At the retail and consumer level, the value of food loss and excess just in the US is estimated at over $161 billion annually. Meanwhile, almost 1 in 8 US inhabitants is food insecure. If we recover just 15% of our excess food, we can feed 25 million people. Now, I know that I can't see you all. I'm just currently seeing Amelia, but even though I may not be able to see you, just raise your hand if you like pie. I like pie. And the reason I asked you to raise your hand if you like pie is because I actually brought some pie for you today. Oh, I see Rosita likes pie. I did bring you pie today, and you're wondering, how is that possible? And Karina also likes pie. How is it possible that I brought pie to a Zoom meeting? Well, because I brought you a pie chart showing that we use 25% of our potable water to grow excess food, like these watermelons that I photographed in a waste bin behind a wholesale produce market in Los Angeles. If this fruit is currently in a landfill, it's generating methane, which is why if excess food were a country, it would be the world's third largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, also known as GHGs, after China and the US. Because when food decomposes in a landfill, it creates a greenhouse gas called methane, which is also a biogas that can be used for energy. Landfills can capture and divert some of that methane, though there's leakage because they're not completely airtight. And the other thing is that the organics, like food waste that are sent to landfills, they just sit there forever. EPA recently published its climate change indicators on greenhouse gas emissions in the US, showing the metric ton carbon equivalent of various GHGs, and methane is the second largest GHG contributor. So here's a question for you. I'm going to show you some pictures, and I want you to guess which one of these do you think is number one for reducing global warming? Do you think it is water efficient showers? Because I have one. I actually have two water efficient shower heads because I've got two bathrooms. Do you think it's a electric car? I don't have an electric car, but they do reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Do you think it is habitat conservation, which is what I did in the Peace Corps, because trees sequester carbon? Do you think it is renewable energy like solar panels and windmills, or wind turbines is the correct terminology? Do you think it's bikes because bikes are zero carbon? I have a bike. Or do you think it's banana peels? Well, guess what? If you guessed banana peels, you're right, because when all there is a banana peel, that means food waste was prevented. Somebody ate that banana that was in the banana peel, and that person was me because I took that picture. So reduced food waste is number one for reducing global warming. And so good is reducing surplus food for the climate that, according to Project Drawdown's 100 Solutions to Reverse Global Warming, reduced food waste is ranked #1 for its potential to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So, given the universal challenge of sustainably managing surplus food and the potential for preventing or recovering it, in 2015, EPA and the U.S. Department of Agriculture, joined by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, announced a national goal to reduce food loss and waste by 50% by the year 2030, using 2010 as the baseline year. So I'm going to show you a quick video of our Administrator Reagan kind of summing up what I just said. And you should be able to hear it. If you can't, Amelia, just raise your hand, but I did select sound for this video.
At EPA, we're moving with a sense of urgency to fight climate change, from tackling methane emissions and phasing down HFCs to electrifying our cars and trucks. Another area that's particularly important to addressing the climate crisis is food waste. Food is the most common material found in our landfills. EPA estimates that food waste represents more than 20% of the trash that Americans generate. When food ends up in landfills, it releases methane, a powerful greenhouse gas. Nearly 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from food loss and waste. Addressing food waste reduces greenhouse gas emissions, prevents resource losses, and can improve access to nutritious food. That's why EPA is excited to work together with our federal partners, the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, to cut food loss and waste in half by 2030. We also recognize the important role that the public and private partnerships play, and we will continue to work with government partners and industry leaders to prevent and reduce food waste across the supply chain. EPA encourages you, individuals, businesses, nonprofits, and governments to prevent food waste, donate excess food to those in need, and recycle food scraps into usable products. Working together, we can reduce food waste throughout the supply chain, help consumers waste less, and tackle climate change at the same time. Please visit our website, epa.gov/reducefoodwaste, to learn more about what you can do.
So that was our EPA Administrator, Michael Reagan, just giving a summary of food waste and what we can do and the goal that I also mentioned. So now the question is, how can we cut food waste in half by the year 2030? What can we all do? What can each of us do to work towards this goal? So first of all, we start with the wasted food scale. And this scale has a QR code. In fact, throughout the slides, you'll see QR codes with links so you can go directly to these resources. But the wasted food scale, it's actually available in English, Espanol, Chinese, Korean, Russian, Arabic, Tagalog, and Vietnamese. And it ranks actions from least preferred to most preferred that you can take to prevent and divert surplus food from the drain, landfill, or incineration. So progressing through the scale, apply food scraps to soil or anaerobic digestion. And anaerobic digestion is basically an oxygen-free vessel that captures the methane from the food scraps for energy. And in this particular scenario, it's anaerobic digestion with disposal of the digestate or biosolids. Next up is composting or anaerobic digestion with beneficial use of the digestate. And the digestate is just those food scraps that are left over after all the methane has been sucked out of them, and then they can be sent to compost. Next up is use wasted food to feed animals, or you can leave it unharvested if it's a farm. If you have unserved surplus, donate or upcycle fresh, wholesome food to people. The federal Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Food Donation Act protects surplus food donors from liability. And that's at the federal level. The state of California has its own Good Samaritan Food Donation Act under Assembly Bill 1219. And these bills protect food donors from civil and criminal liability when they donate food that is fit for human consumption to a nonprofit organization or food bank. The primary goal of the wasted food scale is to eliminate the need to manage food as a material in your waste stream through the prevention of wasted food, which is produced by and serve only what is needed. This is also known as source reduction, which means reduce the volume of surplus food generated. So the more food that you source reduce, the more money and resources you save, particularly if you are a food service facility like a restaurant or a cafeteria or a dining commons at a college or university. Champions 12.3 published a report called The Business Case for Reducing Food Loss and Waste, showing that for every $1 a food service facility invests in food waste prevention strategies like excess food measurement, they can earn $14 in savings from things like smaller food purchases and less waste handling, amongst other actions. If you're at home in the kitchen, you can measure your own daily food surplus through paper tracking or on a computer spreadsheet. Download EPA's free food waste paper tracking log at the website listed here, or create your own. So it's very important to measure your excess food before you actually do anything about it, because you really can only manage what you measure. So here's just an example of measurement that EPA has engaged in. We embarked on a number of student-led excess food measurement assessments during lunchtime at both high schools and middle schools. And in this particular case, at one high school, by the end of the 1 hour lunch, we had collected 103 pounds of leftover brown rice from students' plates that they did not want to finish. And we surveyed them, asking them why did they have that leftover brown rice on their plate. And their primary reasons for leaving the rice uneaten was that they felt that it was too bland and dry. So using this information, a kitchen can increase consumption by cooking the rice with more water, adding condiments, and serving smaller portions, thereby saving money on food purchasing and disposal. During this same assessment, we also intercepted 263 unopened food and beverage items from students' lunch trays that could have been source reduced or placed on a share table. And in this case, the solution is to buy less in accordance with the measurement results. Let's now learn about EPA's home-based tool, Food Too Good to Waste, also available in Spanish as Comida Demasiado Rica para Desperdiciarla. It's an implementation guide and toolkit. The implementation guide teaches local governments and community organizations how to implement a Food Too Good to Waste campaign in their community, while the toolkit provides behavior change and outreach tools designed to assist households in reducing excess food in their homes by eating what they buy. It includes 5 strategies with significant potential to reduce wasted food in households. These strategies are to get smart, smart shopping, smart storage, smart prep, and smart saving. The Get Smart Take the Challenge tool consists of instructions and worksheets for households to collect and measure how much leftover edible food they have over the course of a 5-week period. In order to get smart, you can copy and print these food measurement labels for affixing to a container or bag for measuring by volume. You can also use a measuring cup and or measure by weight with the scale. Whatever method of measurement you use, it's a good idea to just pick that one unit of measurement and then stick with it for the entire time that you are measuring your wasted food. So raise your hand if you make a grocery list. Before you go out shopping, I do. Even if it's just a few things, I still make the grocery list and I do my best to stick with it because it helps me to stay focused and it helps to avoid those impulse buys. So the smart shopping, shop with meals in mind, Ideas Inteligentes tool, provides a template for making shopping lists to prevent food from being wasted. It's designed to encourage meal planning, which optimizes the use of your food purchases. The tool also focuses on the cost-saving benefits of using already purchased food communicated by the phrase, shop your kitchen first. What does it mean to shop your kitchen first? While making your grocery list, check your cupboards, fridge, and freezer to see if you already have the item in stock, because you might, even if you think you don't. And I can tell you this from experience, that there have been numerous times when I thought I needed something, put it on my list, bought it, came home to put it in the cupboard, and there, lo and behold, at the back of the cupboard was that exact same item. That's why it's very important to shop your kitchen first. And you can also create recipes around the food items you currently have on hand, rather than just going out and buying more food. The Smart Storage Fruit and Vegetable Storage Tips tool is a visual prompt to remind households how to keep produce fresh. For example, immediately store berries, cucumbers, and fresh herbs inside the fridge, while placing things like onions and avocados outside the fridge until you actually need them. The U.S. Department of Agriculture's Food Keeper app, available in English, Espanol, and Portuguese, shows how long to store perishable foods and beverages for maximum freshness. Who here likes guacamole? I do. In fact, I plan to have some delicious guacamole toast for lunch today. Yes, I see Luisa likes guacamole too. The Food Keeper app shows that guacamole can be stored 3 to 4 days in the fridge and 3 to 4 months in the freezer. Raise your hand if you've eaten tofu. Anybody here? Yes, I love tofu. It's very healthy for you. It's got all your amino acids. In fact, I just had some last night. And the app says that you can store tofu for a week in the fridge and 5 months in the freezer. So use the app to add calendar reminders to your phone, prompting you to consume a given food while it's still fresh. And if you don't want to use the app, it's also available on a desktop browser. The Smart Prep Now, Eat Later tool provides households with tips on preparing perishable foods soon after shopping, like immediately cutting up perishable items, then freezing them until the moment you actually need them. You can smart prep just about anywhere, including Ecuador. That's me in the US Peace Corps, helping community members harvest and smart prep chonta, a tropical seasonal fruit from a palm tree. Smart Prep, Smart Saving, Eat First is a downloadable and printable sign that reminds you what to eat first in your refrigerator. You can place fresh foods that need to be eaten in the next day or two into a container or in a designated area of the fridge with the Eat First sign posted as a reminder to consume those items ASAP. So if you want to try out the Food Too Good to Waste tool on your own, we suggest a 5-week timeline. And the goal of the product is source reduction, which I mentioned is reduce the volume of surplus food generated. And you're looking here at the food recovery hierarchy. That's the old wasted food scale. So now we're using what's called the wasted food scale, which I shared with you earlier. Previously, it was the food recovery hierarchy, which is still relevant. It's just that the wasted food scale is a little more tailored to today's needs. But anyway, your tasks here are, if you choose to do this, first, I recommend viewing the Food Too Good to Waste webinar to give you a good background research. And then in the first 2 weeks, you get smart by just measuring on a daily basis all of your excess edible food and beverage that you or your family sends to trash or compost if you have a compost bin. And you got to include who recorded the data, the date and time, the excess food or beverage type, the amount, and that can be in volume, number, or weight, and then the reason for the excess. And you feel free, you can use this table that I have in my presentation as a template. You can create your own, but make sure you do have these 5 columns. Then in weeks 3 and 4, you're going to choose any one or more of these smart strategies while continuing to daily measure your household's excess food. And then in week 5, you're going to start comparing your excess food quantity to weeks 1 and 2. Because the idea is that in weeks 1 and 2, you're just measuring without changing anything. And then in weeks 3 through 5, you're implementing the smart strategies. And then in that final week, you're going to make your comparisons to see if there was a difference. So just one important tip when you're doing this is you only want to measure your excess edible food, things that you would actually eat. So like if it's an edible item like an eggshell, a bone, or a produce trimming like a pineapple rind, those things most people don't eat. I've never consumed an eggshell or a pineapple rind or a bone, even though my dog loved bones. Most humans don't eat bones. So just stick with edible things, those things that you would normally eat. That's what you're going to measure, and that's what you're going to try to change in terms of the food waste prevention. So these are just some results of communities that that participated in the Food Too Good to Waste campaigns like Honolulu and Seattle. And the reduction in preventable food waste range from decreases of 11 to 48% by weight and from 27 to 39% by volume. The magnitude of potential reduction in preventable excess has shown to be 50% or more. So let's round out this part of the presentation with a
Roughly 1/3 of food produced for human consumption is wasted or lost each year. Resources to make uneaten food, such as land, fresh water, labor, energy, and other inputs, could be conserved for more productive uses. Reducing food waste is also good for the environment. Who cares about reducing food waste?
I do.
I do.
I do.
I do.
I do. I serve the right portions to my kids so we don't waste food.
I pack nutritious lunches I know my kids will eat.
I make a grocery list so I don't buy more than I need.
I make smoothies with brown bananas and oat greens.
I compost our cooking trimmings and plate waste to make great soil for our gardens.
Do you care about reducing food waste? For more information on food waste and how to reduce it, visit www.usda.gov/food-loss-and-waste/consumers.
All right, so that was a video by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, who, as you know, is one of EPA's 3 partners to cut food waste in half by the year 2030. So now I'm going to transition over to just giving you kind of a brief overview of some of EPA's other food waste prevention, reduction, and recycling tools. We have a whole bunch, but I'm just going to highlight just a few. So first of all, the excess food opportunities map. This is a map, it's an interactive map that identifies and displays facility-specific information about potential generators and recipients of excess food in the industrial, commercial, and institutional sectors, and also provides estimates of excess food by generator type. The map displays the locations of nearly 950,000 potential excess food generators. It shows the locations of communities with source-separated organics programs, refrigerated warehousing and storage facilities, and about 6,500 potential recipients of excess food, including anaerobic digestion facilities, composters, and food banks. Type in the zip code you wish to search, then select your mapping layers, including nearby food waste generators and excess food recipients. And you can also select environmental justice layers to identify underserved communities that might be in need of excess food. Use the map to inform food waste management decisions at the local level. Identify potential sources of food for rescue and reuse. Identify potential feedstocks for compost, anaerobic digestion, or other excess food recyclers. Identify potential infrastructure gaps for managing excess food, and identify alternatives to sending excess food to landfills. The next tool is the Managing and Transforming Waste Streams tool, which is a table of 100 measures that communities, like cities, can employ to reduce waste and recover materials, including excess food. By using interactive functions, local planners can explore best practices in the form of ordinances, policies, programs, contracts, outreach and technical assistance, and infrastructure development, with the objective of creating a list of strategies tailored to their community's needs and capabilities. The tool includes over 300 implementation examples from communities across the US, including Southern California, and it includes links to local ordinances and program websites, as well as model language for amending service provider contracts or franchise agreements. The measures and implementation examples capture nuances and approaches local governments can take and illustrates opportunities to phase in more stringent practices over time. And finally, the waste reduction model, also known as WARM, is a tool that provides comparative estimates of the potential greenhouse gas emissions, energy savings, and economic impacts of materials managed in baseline and alternative materials management practices, including source reduction, recycling, composting, anaerobic digestion, combustion, and landfilling. So basically what this model does is it just compares the greenhouse gas emissions by you basically plug in the amount of, say, food waste that you intend to landfill, like if you're a city waste management provider. And if you want to figure out, well, if we were to create a composting site and send that same amount of food waste that's currently going to landfill to a compost site, what would the GHG savings be? So it allows you to make those projections. And in addition to comparing the greenhouse gas emissions reductions, it also helps you compare the energy savings as well as labor hours, wages, and tax savings. So it's a very useful tool, and we're periodically updating it. I believe we're now in version 16. So it does have like those last three features, the labor, the wages, and the taxes that we did not have before. So let us now wrap up with the quiz you took earlier. And after the quiz, I am going to just launch straight into a few slides about jobs at EPA and federal jobs in general, and then I'll take questions. But going back to the original quiz, how much food do you think goes uneaten each year? Does anybody want to open up their mic and tell us how much food you think goes uneaten each year? Okay, I'll go ahead and tell you. It's 1/3. We basically waste 1/3 of our food each year. What do you think the national value is of our uneaten food? Anybody want to chime in? I see somebody put a chat in there.
See?
Okay, so if you answered B, 161 billion, you are correct. It's $161 billion. What's the national goal to reduce food loss and waste? Anybody know? Amelia, if you want to just tell me what's in the chat, it would be helpful.
Oh yeah, the majority of answered B.
50% by 2030. Yes, that is correct. What's the name of the law protecting surplus food donors from liability? Who knows the answer to that question?
We have an A.
Did you say A?
Someone answered A, yes. Please.
Yes, that's correct. It is the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Food Donation Act. And finally, to prevent excess food at home, which of these actions can you take?
We have C, E, A, B, E. Someone else?
All right.
Yes.
It's every answer except A. You can track and measure excess food, make a grocery list before shopping, properly store fresh produce, and shop your kitchen first. So if you want more information about the resources I shared, everything that was on the slides, basically, I think, except for Drawdown, because that's a non-EPA website. But you can go to our Sustainable Management of Food website. And since you all are university students, you might be thinking about what are my career possibilities. And since I do work at EPA, I just want to tell you a little bit about how to get a job at EPA or other federal agencies, because EPA is a federal agency of the U.S. government. And EPA jobs are available throughout the country to both U.S. citizens and nationals. And a national is basically, there are certain territories where they're not actually citizens, but they're on a U.S. territory, so they could still qualify for a job at the EPA. But generally speaking, it's, you need to be a U.S. citizen to get a job with the federal government. As I mentioned, EPA has 10 regional offices. You can see here, plus a headquarters in Washington, D.C. We here are located in Region 9, also known as the Pacific Southwest region. That covers tribal lands, Arizona, California, Hawaii, Nevada, Guam, and the Pacific Islands. Most EPA regions have field offices and labs. We have our Region 9 headquarters in San Francisco, as well as a lab, I believe it's in the Berkeley area, and field offices in LA and San Diego. And we also have an emergency response facility I think it's in Carson or Long Beach. There are about 16,000 full-time EPA employees, over half of whom are engineers, scientists, and environmental protection specialists. We also have attorneys, a communications specialists, financial specialists, and information technologists, amongst other types of positions. So if you're a student, meaning a college student, there are several opportunities. starting with a program called Pathways, which offers paid internships to college students who are enrolled at least half-time or have recently graduated, I believe, like within the last year. And Pathways positions often convert to permanent positions. We do have one person in my section, I'm in the zero waste section, who started out as a Pathways student. She was a student at UC Berkeley and started out in Pathways and is now a permanent EPA career employee. Additionally, there are some opportunities that are called non-competitive positions. And these are positions where the competition is basically cut down. You're not competing with everybody. You're just basically competing for these positions as if you were a federal employee. So these non-competitive opportunities are for veterans of the military, recent Peace Corps and AmeriCorps alumni, and Schedule A for people with a disability. And I came on board as a non-competitive candidate because I had recently served in the Peace Corps. USAjobs.gov is the hub for all jobs with the federal government. And when you go to USAjobs.gov, you can search by hiring path, salary, department, and agency. At USAjobs.gov, you'll find jobs at EPA and all other federal agencies. If you find a job that you're interested in, you need to create an account in USAjobs.gov, upload your resume, and fill in the application. Did I mention that the website you need to go to is USAjobs.gov? And so finally, let me just end with one last video.
These are careers for change. Be the keeper of safe water. Be the champion of new knowledge. Be the advocate for environmental justice. Be the steward of clean air. Be the seeker of fresh innovators. Be the driver of new infrastructure. Be you. Be progress. Be EPA.
All right, so now I'm happy to take any questions. It can be questions about food waste. It can be a question about EPA. It can be questions about jobs at EPA and careers, any kind of questions you have about what I just talked about. And Amelia, if you want to just kind of check the chat or see if people are raising their hands, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. You need to type your question in the chat or you can unmute yourself. Talia has one question. Would College Corp students count as AmeriCorps for the EPA jobs?
Okay, so is College Corps a program? I've never heard of College Corps.
Yes, it's a federal funded program that is all over the US, I believe.
Okay.
And we
what
have
what do they do?
So they are basically working as they have 20 to 40 hours and they will be sent to different sites. I've had College Corps myself working in my office, focusing on sustainability, but I'm pretty sure they offer in different areas. But usually university or college students they can enroll in this program. And I believe they are working 20 to 40 hours, right? Is that correct? Do we have a College Corp student here? Yes, that's correct. Okay, yeah. So I guess what Natalia is wondering is if College Corp students, if they count as AmeriCorps for the EPA jobs. Do you want to clarify the question a little bit, Natalia? Oh, what are the basic requirements to work on the EPA?
Okay, so just going back to that question about College Corps, that's the first I've heard of that. And I don't know. So maybe just if you can do a little research on that, I would just, look it up on your search provider and try to find out that way. That's what I would do. And then what was the second question about EPA? Something about
Kiara asks, what are the basic requirements to work under EPA?
Okay, so basic requirements to work at EPA.
Yes.
Well, really, I mean, the only main requirement to work at EPA is you need a college degree. And it can really be just about anything. It doesn't have to be science related or engineering related. We have people with all kinds of degrees. The only thing is though, is like, so basically there's different job classifications at EPA. One of them is environmental scientist. Another one is environmental protection specialist. And then there's others, I mentioned we have lawyers, for example. The thing is though, it's like if you don't have a science degree and you don't qualify as a scientist according to EPA's criteria, then your job selection is limited because a person who's classified as a scientist, they can apply for more kinds of jobs than a person who's classified as an environmental protection specialist. So, for example, I am an environmental protection specialist. I do have a Master of Science degree. However, I don't have enough science credits to qualify to be a scientist under EPA's criteria. So I cannot apply for jobs as a scientist. I can only apply for jobs as an environmental protection specialist. So bottom line is, if you want to increase your job options at EPA, then you'll want to be a scientist, although you don't need to be a scientist to get a job at EPA. As you know, I have a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology as well. And there are people that don't have master's degrees. There's lots of people at EPA that only have bachelor's degrees in different things. And there are people that have bachelor's degrees in science that are scientists at EPA. So it just kind of depends on your college credits that you have. But again, really the only prerequisite to working at EPA is to have a college degree and then to be a citizen or a national of the US.
Okay, did that answer the question, Kiara? Yes. Okay, great. She also asked, is there job options for alumni over 2 years? Do you mean alumni from College Corps or what type of alumni? Sorry. Kiara, would you clarify what you mean with alumni? For students over a certain time. So, do you mean someone that graduated 2 years ago? Yes.
Okay,
So
so I think maybe what that person is talking about is pathways. Um, yeah, so to be pathways, you have you have to have applied within 2 years of graduation. So if it's been over 2 years, you can still apply for a job at EPA. You don't need to be pathways first. Pathways is just if you are in college or if you recently graduated, it kind of makes it a little bit easier to get in. But I applied to work at EPA like many years after graduating from college. So there's no limit on when you can apply for a job at EPA or any other federal agency. You can apply for a job at EPA or a federal agency anytime.
okay, great, thank you. Are there any other questions?
Does anybody have any food waste related questions?
I think it was crystal clear.
Okay, great.
Well, in that case, I also put it in the chat, but this presentation will be available on our YouTube site as well. So if you guys want to review the material, you can do that. I will load it up right after we finish this call today. But thank you everyone for joining. I hope it was insightful. I thought it was really great. So thank you so much, Andre.
Thanks for inviting me. It's great to chat with y'all.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay. Have a great day.
You too.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.